face a lot of problems, and I think this is one of the reasons that we have touched a chord with so many young people, is because the young people realize what you're inheriting. Right now, it is very clear that this country fiscally is not solvent. We are a bankrupt country. And therefore, the burden is falling on the next generation, who will have to work awfully hard to pay all the bills. The main way you can tell whether a country is truly insolvent and on the verge of a true bankruptcy is the value of a currency. And the value of our currency today is not going up. That is an indication that regardless of what we do, it's going to end, because we no longer can afford the warfare, welfare state. We have to stop it from this runaway, out of control state that we have today. In Washington now, we have a bunch of politicians that run our lives. They pretend to run the economy. Usually they run it into the ground. And also a bunch of politicians and a lot of support from the public media that says that it is our function and purpose and our moral responsibility, and constitutionally they claim that it is our responsibility to run the world, and that is not the case. We should mind our own business and run our own affairs. The system of government we have today encourages everybody to go to Washington for what they want. Freedom does the opposite. Freedom puts the responsibility on the individual, on the family, on the community, on local government. But once the government takes control of the economy, control of our lives, and policing the world, all the decision making is made in Washington. So it's not surprising that you have a lot of special interests in Washington, a lot of lobbyists, and the lobbyists are under attack today, and they should be. But the one thing that we have to remember is we don't attack the symptom, we have to attack the cause. Lobbying is another word for petitioning. You have a right to petition your government. You should never have campaign finance law reform that restricts your right to petition the government. But people say, but it's out of control and the lobbyists run the country, and that is true. But there's two ways of answering that and two ways to take care of that. First, if we had the right people in Washington who could resist the temptation of yielding to the pressures of the lobbyists, there would be no conflict, there would be no influence by the lobbyists. But ultimately, it is regulating the lobbyists will not solve the problem. Ultimately, this problem can only be solved by eliminating the power that government has to pass out favors. That's where our problem is. So as time goes on, government gets more and more control. We've known about a military-industrial complex for a long time. Eisenhower warned us about that. But now, in the last 25 years, we have developed a medical-industrial complex because government runs medicine. We have corporate medicine. We don't have free market medicine. And what are the answers that you hear from all the other politicians, especially on the other side? They're talking about socializing medicine because government has failed. We don't need that. But we have the bankers. The bankers are very much involved. They love the monetary system because they benefit it. They help create the money out of thin air, and therefore they're very much involved too. So it is very important to recognize that those individuals that you see that benefit so much, who make so much money off the remnant of the free market system, are not the ones that will save the system. They do not come to Washington to lobby me for less government. They come for contracts. It's people like you who come to Washington who lobby for nothing more than freedom and get the government off our backs. When we talk about getting the governments off our backs, we talk about this in many ways. First, in a personal way. Governments aren't designed to regulate our personal behavior. They're not to tell us how we're supposed to run our lives. They're not there to promote moral behavior or ethical behavior. It is very good that we all follow moral and ethical standards, but that is a personal choice and a family value. It's not for the government to decide. Once the government gets involved in dictating those type of values, all they will do is undermine our liberties. And that is where we are today. And we have some in Washington who do not trust the people when they say, well, we can't trust the people. We don't know what the books they'll read and what movies they'll look at and what habits they'll follow. And then another group will say, well, we can't trust the people because they might waste their money. They might spend on things that we don't approve of. So they want to control our personal lives, and another group wants to control our economic lives. And then both seem to want to tell the world how to live. If you look at the Constitution doesn't tell the government, give the right to the government to tell us how to live. It doesn't tell the government how we're supposed to run the economy, and it certainly doesn't give our government the authority to march around the world with force, imposing our will on other countries. The Constitution was written very clearly. It was to promote liberty. And in order to promote liberty, it restrains the government. So that is what the Constitution is all about, telling us what the thou shalt nots for the federal government. And yet, lo and behold, what do? We have a federal government that has done exactly the opposite. The federal government is telling us we can't hardly touch our property without permission from the federal government. The government is supposed to protect honest money, only gold and silver to be legal tender. What do? They become the official counterfeiters. They should be arrested for counterfeiting the money. Government's supposed to protect private property and private contracts, and yet they use the right of eminent domain to take property from the poor and give it to the rich. So today we face a major crisis because of this, and today we have to do something about it. And this is where I have been encouraged. Even before this last year, where I have been much more encouraged, I had always been encouraged that we're moving in the right directions. Not in Washington, D.C. They haven't gotten the message yet. They don't even know yet that you exist out there. Will we be on the evening news tonight across the nation? No, they're not going to hear from us. But they will hear from us in another way, because we have a little bit of competition known to us, and it's been available to us, and we can communicate. It's called the Internet. But this foreign policy is not Ron Paul foreign policy. It's a foreign policy that's been around a long time, because the founders talked about it. They advised against entanglements. They advised against policing the world. And Republicans have followed that generally better than the Democrats. Just think, Korea was a war that Eisenhower was elected to stop, as well as Nixon was supposed to stop the Vietnam War. Even in the year 2000, our platform said we didn't like nation building, we didn't like policing the world, and we made criticism of the Clinton policy. And where are we today? More involved than ever. And it's time that we reconsider that. If we do believe in the Constitution, our foreign policy in the Middle East would be very simple. We would just come home.